The stars had watched the empire grow for 10,000 years. They had seen it swallow world after world, system after system, until 17 star systems bowed before a single throne. They were ancient. They were powerful. They were cold. Queen sat upon her throne made of black crystal, and she felt nothing. This was the way of her people. Emotions were weakness. Love was a disease that made lesser species soft. They had cut such things from their hearts long ago, and they had become the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. But 20 cycles ago, something had broken the Queen's perfect world. Her daughter had disappeared. Princess had been born different. From the moment she opened her violet eyes, there was something strange about her. She asked questions that no child should ask. She wondered why they conquered instead of traded. She wondered why they destroyed instead of built. She wondered why her mother's face never smiled. The Queen had tried to fix her. She had sent the finest teachers to Phil's mind with proper thoughts. She had punished the girl when she showed weakness. She had reminded her, again and again, that she was heir to the greatest empire in existence. She would rule 17 star systems one day. She could not afford to feel, but kept feeling anyway. On the night of her coming-of-age ceremony, the princess stood before 10,000 nobles. Her silver skin glowed under the lights of the great hall. Her violet eyes looked out at a sea of cold faces. Her mother sat on the throne above her, watching, waiting for her daughter to speak the ancient words. Was supposed to swear her loyalty to the empire. She was supposed to promise that she would continue the conquest, that she would bring more worlds under rule, that she would be as cold and perfect as her mother. Instead, she ran. She did not speak the words. She did not bow. She turned and walked out of the great hall while 10,000 nobles watched in shock. The Queen's guards moved to stop her, but the Queen raised her hand. She wanted to see what her foolish daughter would do. Stole a small shuttle from the royal hangar. She flew it out of the palace, out of the city, out of the system. She flew until the stars around her were strange and unfamiliar. She flew until no ship could find her. And then she disappeared. Queen sent search parties to every corner of the known galaxy. She sent her best hunters, her trackers, her interrogators. They searched 1,000 worlds. They questioned 100 species. They offered rewards that could buy entire planets. But no one could find the missing princess. The Queen did not weep. She did not rage. She simply waited and she planned. Her daughter would return one day. The galaxy was vast, but it was not infinite. Sooner or later, someone would see a silver-skinned girl with violet eyes. Sooner or later would make a mistake. 20 cycles passed. The empire continued to grow. New worlds fell under rule. New species learned to bow before the silver throne. The Queen grew older, though her face showed few signs of age. Her heart grew colder with each passing year. She had other children now, sons and daughters born from political alliances, but none of them had fire. None of them asked difficult questions. None of them made her feel anything at all. Sometimes, late at night, the Queen would stand at the window of her chamber and look out at the stars. She would wonder where her firstborn daughter had gone. She would wonder if was still alive. She would wonder if she had made a mistake all those years ago when she tried to crush the feeling out of her child. But such thoughts were weakness. The Queen pushed them away and returned to her duties. Meanwhile, on the far side of the galaxy, had found something they had never dreamed of. She had found a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system. They had this world centuries ago and dismissed it as worthless. The dominant species was young and primitive. They had not even left their own planet yet. They fought among themselves over patches of land and invisible lines on maps. They were loud and messy and emotional. They were perfect. Had crashed her shuttle in a place the locals called Montana. Her ship had failed as it entered the atmosphere, and she had barely survived the landing. She lay in a field of tall grass, her silver blood leaking from a wound on her head, and she thought she was going to die. But then a human found her. His name was Daniel Carter. He was a farmer, a simple man who grew wheat and raised cattle on land his family had owned for generations. He had been walking home from town when he saw the fire falling from the sky. He had followed the smoke to the crashed ship, expecting to find twisted metal and nothing else. Instead, he found a woman. She did not look human. Her skin was silver and her hair was white as snow. When he lifted her eyelids, he saw eyes the color of violets. She was bleeding a strange purple liquid. She was barely breathing. Any other person might have run. Any other person might have called the authorities, or the military, or someone who knew how to deal with things from other worlds. But Daniel Carter was not any other person. He picked up the strange woman and carried her to his truck. He drove her to his farmhouse, laid her on his bed, and cleaned her wounds with gentle hands. He did not know if she would live. He did not know if he was helping or hurting her, but he knew that he could not leave her to die alone in that field. Woke 3 days later. She opened her violet eyes and saw a wooden ceiling above her. She smelled something cooking in another room. She heard a voice humming a tune she did not recognize. For a moment, she thought she had died and gone to some strange afterlife. Then the human walked in. He was tall, with brown hair and kind eyes. His hands were rough from work, and his clothes were simple and worn. He smiled when he saw that she was awake, and that smile made something strange happen in his chest. No one had ever smiled at her like that before. Daniel brought her soup. He did not ask what she was or where she came from. He simply fed her, made sure she was comfortable, and told her that she was safe. He said his name was Daniel, and she was welcome to stay as long as she needed. Did not understand. She had been raised to believe that all species served their own interests. She had been taught that kindness was a trick, that generosity always came with a price. Why would this human help her? What did he want in return? But Daniel wanted nothing. He simply helped her because she needed help. It was the most alien thing had ever experienced. She stayed 1 day, then 1 week, then 1 month. She healed slowly, and Daniel never rushed her. He brought her books about Earth and its history. He taught her the language the locals spoke. He showed her how to plant seeds and watch them grow. And slowly, without meaning to, began to feel something she had never felt before. She began to feel at home. The stars still watched as they always did, but for the first time in her life did not care about the stars. She cared about the wheat fields and the sunset and the kind man who had saved her life. She did not know that her mother was still searching. She did not know that the Empire would find her one day. She only knew that she was finally, truly free. The seasons changed on the small blue planet and learned what it meant to live. On her, time had been measured in conquest. A cycle began when the fleet departed for war and ended when it returned with new territories. But on Earth, time moved differently. It moved with the planting of seeds in spring and the harvest of wheat in autumn. It moved with the rising and setting of a single yellow sun. Had been on Daniel's farm for nearly a year now. Her wounds had healed long ago, but she had not left. She told herself it was because she had nowhere else to go. She told herself it was because she needed more time to plan her next move. But deep down, she knew the truth. She did not want to leave. Daniel had given her a small room in his farmhouse. He had given her clothes to wear, food to eat, and work to do. At first, had not understood the concept of work. On her, the royal family did not labor. Servants did everything for them. But Daniel did not have servants. He woke before sunrise every day to feed the animals. He spent long hours in the fields, planting and weeding and watering. His hands were rough and calloused, and his back ached at the end of each day. And yet, he seemed happy. Asked him once why he worked so hard when he could simply hire others to do it for him. Daniel had laughed at that. He said that there was something special about working with your own hands. He said that when you planted a seed and watched it grow, You felt connected to the earth in a way that nothing else could match. He said that the sweat on your brow and the dirt under your nails were signs of a life well lived. Did not understand at first, but she wanted to. She started helping him in the fields. She learned how to hold a shovel, how to pull weeds, how to tell the difference between a healthy plant and a sick one. Her silver hands, which had once been soft and clean, grew rough like Daniel's. Her back ached at the end of each day. And she found that she did not mind. There was something beautiful about watching things grow. On her, they built great machines and conquered great empires, but they never created life. They only took it. Here on this small farm was helping to create something. She was planting seeds that would become wheat, that would become bread, that would feed people. It was such a simple thing, but it made her feel more powerful than she had ever felt sitting in a palace. Daniel taught her other things too. He taught her how to cook simple meals over a fire. He taught her how to ride a horse across the open plains. He taught her the names of the stars in the night sky, which were different from the names they used. And he taught her how to laugh. Had never laughed before coming to Earth. They did not laugh. They did not see the point of it, but Daniel laughed all the time. He laughed when his dog chased its own tail. He laughed when he tripped over a rock in the field. He laughed when the rain came and soaked them both before they could reach the house. At first did not know how to respond, but slowly his laughter became contagious. She found herself smiling at small things. She found herself chuckling at his jokes, even the ones that were not very funny. And one day, when a chicken escaped from its pen and led them both on a chase around the farm, she laughed so hard that tears came from her violet eyes. It was the first time she had ever cried from joy. 2 years passed, then 3, then 5, stopped thinking of herself as a princess in hiding. She started thinking of herself as a farmer's wife. Because that is what she had become. She and Daniel married on a summer evening beside the river that ran through his land. There was no grand ceremony, no 10,000 nobles watching. There was only the two of them, the setting sun and wildflowers in her silver hair. Daniel had asked her to marry him on a quiet night after dinner. He had been nervous, which she found strange. He was always so confident, so sure of himself, but his hands had shaken as he held hers, and his voice had trembled as he asked her to spend her life with him. Had said yes before he finished the question. She had worried at first that she was being selfish. Daniel did not know who she really was. He did not know that she was the heir to an empire, that her mother commanded the greatest fleet in the galaxy, that one day they might come looking for her. She had told him that she was from another world, and he had accepted that without question. But she had not told him everything. She told him on their wedding night. She told him about her mother, the cold queen who had never smiled. She told him about the empire, the 17 star systems that bowed before the silver throne. She told him about the ceremony, and how she had run rather than swear loyalty to a way of life that felt wrong. Daniel listened to everything. He did not interrupt. He did not run. And when she was finished, he took her hands and looked into her violet eyes. He said that he did not care about empires or queens or thrones. He said that he loved her, not her bloodline. He said that if her mother came looking for her, they would face that day together. Cried again that night, but not from joy. She cried because she had finally found someone who loved her for who she was, not what she was supposed to be. 3 years after their wedding, gave birth to twins. The boy came first, screaming and red-faced and full of life. They named him Samuel after Daniel's grandfather. He had his father's brown hair but his mother's violet eyes. He was loud and curious and always getting into trouble. The girl came second, quieter but no less strong. They named her Grace because Daniel said she moved like a dancer even in her first moments of life. She had her mother's silver-white hair but her father's warm smile. She was thoughtful and kind and always asking questions. Looked at her children and felt something she had never expected to feel. She felt complete. The twins grew up on the farm, running through wheat fields and catching fireflies in jars. They learned to ride horses before they learned to read. They helped their father in the fields and their mother in the kitchen. They had no idea that their mother was from another world. They had no idea that somewhere in the stars, a cold queen was still searching. Daniel and decided together to keep that secret. They wanted their children to have a normal life, or as normal a life as half-alien children could have. They would tell them the truth one day when they were old enough to understand. But not yet, not while they were still young and innocent and free. Samuel grew into a strong boy with a quick mind and a kind heart. He loved animals and spent hours talking to the horses in the barn. He made friends easily and always shared his food with anyone who was hungry. Grace grew into a gentle girl with a deep curiosity about the world. She loved books and spent hours reading under the old oak tree behind the house. She asked questions about everything, especially the stars. She would point at the night sky and ask her mother which one she came from. Would smile and change the subject, but inside her heart would ache with fear. 12 years passed like water through open fingers. The farm grew. The children grew. Daniel's hair began to turn gray at the edges and lines appeared around his eyes, but his smile never changed and his love never faded. Sometimes forgot that she was not human. She sometimes forgot that there was a galaxy beyond this small blue planet. She sometimes forgot that she was being hunted. But the stars never forgot. And one autumn evening, when Samuel and Grace were 12 years old, the sky above the Carter farm turned dark with alien metal. They had finally found her. The warship was larger than anything Earth had ever seen. It blocked out the setting sun as it descended, casting a shadow over the wheat fields and the farmhouse and the family standing on the porch. Its metal skin was black as night, and its shape was like a blade pointed at the heart of the world. Daniel stood with his hand on the porch railing, watching the impossible thing come down from the sky. His knuckles were white, but his face was calm. He had known this day might come. He had spent 12 years preparing himself for it. Stood beside him, her silver skin pale with fear. This was not just any ship. This was a royal vessel, marked with the crest of the silver throne. Her mother had come personally. Samuel and Grace came running from the barn when they heard the noise. They stopped when they saw the ship, their mouths falling open. They had never seen anything like it. They had never imagined that such things existed. Samuel found his voice first. He asked what that thing was. Knelt down and took her children's hands. She looked into their violet eyes, so much like her own, and she told them the truth. She told them that she was not from Earth. She told them that she was a princess from a great empire among the stars. She told them that the ship above them belonged to their grandmother, a queen who ruled 17 star systems. Grace asked if their grandmother was coming to visit. Did not know how to answer that question. The ship landed in the wheat field, crushing the crops beneath its massive weight. A door opened in its side and light poured out, brighter than the sun. Figures emerged from the light, tall and silver-skinned, dressed in armor that gleamed like mirrors. At the front of them walked a woman who needed no armor. Queen had not changed much in 20 cycles. Her silver hair was pulled back tight, and her face was as cold and beautiful as carved ice. Her violet eyes swept over the farm with clear disgust. They lingered on the wooden house, the muddy yard, the simple clothes that the family wore. And then they found. Mother and daughter looked at each other across the field. The queen walked forward, her guards spreading out behind her. Daniel moved to stand in front of his family, but gently pushed past him. This was her fight. This was the moment she had been running from for 20 years. The queen stopped a few feet away from her daughter. She looked up and down, taking in the rough hands, the sun-darkened skin, the simple dress. Her lip curled with something that might have been disappointment. She said that had changed. Said that she had. The queen looked past her daughter at the human man and the two children. She asked who they were, though her tone suggested she already knew and did not approve. Stood tall, she said that Daniel was her husband. She said that Samuel and Grace were her children. She said that this farm was her home. The queen was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was like ice cracking. She said that was heir to the greatest empire in the galaxy. She said that the throne needed its princess. She said that this game, this hiding among primitives, was over. It was time to come home. Asked what would happen to her family. The queen's answer came quickly, without hesitation. The human man was nothing. He would be left behind to live out his short life on this insignificant world. The children were another matter. They were abominations, half-breeds that should never have been born. The queen had not decided yet what to do with them. Perhaps they would be left behind as well. Perhaps they would be eliminated to prevent the contamination of the royal bloodline. Daniel stepped forward then. He was just a farmer. He had no weapons, no army, no power. He was standing before a queen who commanded warships that could destroy planets. He was surrounded by guards who could kill him with a thought. But he did not back down. He said that he did not know much about empires or thrones or bloodlines. He said that he was just a simple man who grew wheat and raised cattle. But he knew one thing for certain. He knew that no one, not a queen, not an army, not all the ships in the galaxy, was going to take his wife or harm his children. The guards raised their weapons. The queen's eyes narrowed. Moved quickly. She stepped between her husband and her mother, her arms spread wide. Her heart was pounding, but her voice was steady. She told her mother that she would not let her hurt them. She told her mother that she would fight, even though she knew she could not win. She told her mother that she would die before she let any harm come to her family. The queen looked at her daughter with an expression had never seen before. It was not anger. It was not disappointment. It was something closer to confusion. She asked why. Why would throw away her birthright for a primitive and two half-breed children? Why would she choose this small, dirty farm over the palaces of the empire? Why would she feel anything for creatures so far beneath her? Answered with a single word. Love. The queen did not seem to understand. She said that love was weakness. She said that love was a disease that infected lesser species. She said that they had cut such things from their hearts long ago. Said that was exactly the problem. She said that she had spent her entire childhood in palaces of black crystal, surrounded by servants who feared her and nobles who wanted to use her. She had never known warmth. She had never known kindness. She had never known what it felt like to be held by someone who cared about her. And then she had come to Earth, and Daniel had carried her from a burning ship and nursed her back to health. He had asked for nothing in return. He had simply helped her because she needed help. That one act of kindness had changed everything. Samuel and Grace moved to stand beside their mother. They were scared, could see it in their eyes, but they did not run. They did not hide. They stood with their family just as Daniel had taught them to do. The queen looked at the four of them standing together, the farmer with his rough hands, the princess with her silver skin, the two children with their violet eyes and human hearts. She raised her hand, closed her eyes, waiting for the blow to fall. She had made her choice. She would not regret it. But the blow did not come. When opened her eyes, the queen was looking at her with that strange expression again. Her hand was still raised, but it was trembling, and in her violet eyes, so much like his own, there was something that might have been doubt. The queen lowered her hand. She said that she had come to take her daughter home. She said that she had spent 20 cycles searching for her. She said that she had imagined this moment 1,000 times. But she had never imagined this. She had never imagined that would be happy. She had never imagined that she would find love. She had never imagined that she would build a family with a species that had dismissed as worthless. The queen was silent for a long moment. The guards waited, the family waited, the whole world seemed to hold its breath. Then the queen did something she had not done in a very long time. She asked a question instead of giving an order. She asked to explain. She asked her to help her understand what had happened here, on this small farm, on this insignificant world. She asked her to tell her why she had chosen this life over everything the Empire could offer. Looked at her mother, and for the first time in her life she saw not a queen but a woman who was confused, a woman who was lost, a woman who had spent so many years being cold that she had forgotten what warmth felt like. Took a deep breath, and she began to speak. Spoke, and the queen listened. The words came slowly at first, like water finding its way through cracks in stone. Told her mother about the crash, about waking up in a strange bed in a strange house. She told her about Daniel, the farmer who had saved her life without asking for anything in return. She told her about learning to plant seeds and watching them grow. She told her about cooking meals over a fire and eating them with people she loved. She told her about laughing until tears came from her eyes, something she had never done in all her years in the palace. The queen stood perfectly still, her face unreadable, but she did not interrupt. She did not turn away. She listened. Told her about falling in love. She described the moment she realized that Daniel was not just her rescuer but her partner. She described their wedding by the river, with wildflowers in her hair and hope in her heart. She described the first time Daniel held her hand and told her that she was enough, that she did not need to be a princess or a queen or anything other than herself. The queen's expression flickered at that. Something moved behind her cold, violet eyes, but still she said nothing. Told her about Samuel and Grace. She described the day they were born, the joy that had filled her when she first held them in her arms. She described watching them take their first steps, speak their first words, ask their first questions about the stars. She said that her children were not abominations. They were miracles. They carried the blood of two worlds in their veins. They had their father's warmth and their mother's fire. They were stronger than either race alone. The queen looked at the twins standing beside their mother. Samuel stared back at her without fear, his jaw set in a way that reminded her of as a child. Grace studied her with curious eyes, as if trying to solve a puzzle. Continued speaking. She told her mother about the things she had learned from humans. She said that humans were small. They lived short lives on a single fragile world. They had no great fleets, no ancient empires, no technology that could cross the stars. By standards, they were nothing. But they had something they had lost long ago. They had hope. Explained what that word meant. Hope was believing that tomorrow could be better than today. Hope was planting a seed even though you might not live to see it grow. Hope was building a life with someone even though you knew that life would one day end. They did not hope. They planned. They conquered. They calculated every move 1,000 years in advance. But they never looked at the future with wonder. They never dreamed of possibilities beyond their control. Humans dreamed all the time. They dreamed of flying to the stars, even though they could barely leave their own planet. They dreamed of peace, even though they had fought wars since the beginning of their history. They dreamed of love, even though love always came with the risk of loss. That was what made them strong. The queen finally spoke. She said that hope sounded like foolishness. She said that dreaming of things beyond your control was a waste of energy. She said that they had become great by eliminating such distractions. Shook her head. She said that they had become powerful, but they had not become great. Power was easy. You built bigger ships, stronger weapons, more efficient systems of control. Any species could do that if they tried hard enough. But greatness was something different. Greatness was creating something beautiful even though it would not last. Greatness was loving someone even though you knew you would lose them one day. Greatness was choosing kindness when cruelty would be easier. Daniel had shown her that. He was just a farmer on a small planet in the middle of nowhere. He would never rule an empire or command a fleet. He would never live for 1,000 years or see the far reaches of the galaxy. But he was greater than any she had ever known. He was greater because he chose to be kind every single day. He was greater because he loved without conditions or calculations. He was greater because he saw a silver-skinned woman bleeding in his field and decided to save her, even though she was strange and different and possibly dangerous. That was true strength. That was what they had forgotten. The queen was quiet for a long time. Her guards shifted uneasily, waiting for orders that did not come. Daniel stood beside his wife, his hand finding hers. Samuel and Grace watched their grandmother with wide eyes. Finally, the queen spoke again. Her voice was softer now, uncertain in a way had never heard before. She asked if truly believed that. She asked if she truly thought that these humans, these short-lived creatures on their tiny world, had something that the greatest empire in the galaxy lacked. Said yes. She said that she had spent 20 years living among humans, and she had learned more about life in that time than in all her centuries in the palace. She had learned that strength was not about conquering others, but about lifting them up. She had learned that love was not weakness but the greatest power in the universe. She had learned that feeling things, really feeling them, was not a disease but a gift. They had cut out their hearts to become powerful. They had become cold and empty and alone. They ruled 17 star systems, but they had no one to share them with. They lived for thousands of years, but their lives were hollow. Was that really what the queen wanted for her daughter? Was that really what she wanted for her? The queen looked at Samuel and Grace again. They were so young, so full of life. They had their mother's violet eyes, the mark of the royal bloodline. But they also had something else, something the queen could not quite name. They had light in their eyes. They had warmth in their smiles. They had something that made them seem more alive than any she had ever known. Grace stepped forward. She was only 12 years old, but she walked toward the queen without fear. She stopped a few feet away and looked up at the ancient woman who ruled 17 star systems. She said that she did not know what it was like to be a queen. She said that she did not know anything about empires or thrones or conquering worlds, but she knew what it was like to be loved. Her father loved her. He woke up early every day to make her breakfast. He read her stories at night until she fell asleep. He told her that she could be anything she wanted to be, and he meant it. Her mother loved her. She taught her about the stars and the worlds beyond their sky. She held her when she was scared and cheered for her when she was brave. She showed her that being different was not something to be ashamed of. Grace said that if being a princess meant giving up that love, she did not want to be a princess. She said that all the empires in the galaxy were not worth one hug from her father or one smile from her mother. The queen stared at the child. This small, half-human girl who should not exist. This abomination that the laws said should be eliminated. But there was nothing abominable about her. There was nothing wrong or broken or impure. There was only a child who loved her family and was not afraid to say so. The queen turned to look at. Her daughter stood straight and proud, her hand in her husband's hand, her son at her side. She was not the frightened princess who had run away 20 years ago. She was something more. She was happy. The queen had not seen anyone truly happy in a very long time. She had forgotten what it looked like. She raised her hand again and the guards tensed, moved to protect her family. But the queen did not give an order to attack. Instead, she waved her guards back. She told them to return to the ship and wait for her there. The guards hesitated. They had never seen their queen do anything like this before. She told them again, more firmly this time, return to the ship. She would speak with her daughter alone. The guards obeyed. They walked back across the crushed wheat field and disappeared into the warship. The queen stood alone before the family. Without her guards, she looked smaller somehow, more like a woman than a ruler. She told that she needed time to think. She told her that everything she believed had been challenged today, and she did not know what to do with that. But she was not going to take her by force. Not today, not yet. She turned and began walking back toward the ship. But before she had gone far, she stopped and looked over her shoulder. She told that she would stay on Earth for a while. She told her that she wanted to see this life that her daughter had built. She wanted to understand. And then she was gone, disappearing into the ship. Let out a breath she had not known she was holding. It was not over, but it was a start. The Queen stayed on Earth for 3 weeks. She did not sleep in her ship. She did not surround herself with guards. Instead, she accepted its invitation to stay in the farmhouse, in the small guest room with the wooden walls and the window that looked out over the wheat fields. It was the smallest room the Queen had ever slept in. It was also, she discovered, the most peaceful. The first few days were awkward. The Queen did not know how to act around humans. She did not know how to act around her own daughter, whom she had not seen in 20 years. She sat stiffly at meals and answered questions with as few words as possible. But slowly, things began to change. Daniel was the first to break through her defenses. He did not treat her like a queen. He treated her like a guest in his home, nothing more and nothing less. He offered her coffee in the morning and asked if she wanted to help with the chores. He told her jokes that she did not understand and laughed anyway when she stared at him blankly. At first the Queen was offended. She was the ruler of 17 star systems. She did not do chores. She did not drink coffee with farmers. She did not laugh at jokes. But Daniel did not seem to care about any of that. He simply kept being kind, kept being warm, kept treating her like a person instead of a title. By the end of the first week, the Queen found herself drinking coffee on the porch at sunrise, watching Daniel head out to the fields. She found herself asking him questions about his life, his farm, his family. She found herself listening to his answers with something that felt almost like interest. The children were harder to reach. Samuel was suspicious of his grandmother, and he made no effort to hide it. He remembered how she had threatened his family, how she had called him and his sister abominations. He was not ready to forgive that. But Grace was different. She was curious about everything, including the cold Queen who had fallen from the stars. She asked questions constantly, about the Empire, about what it was like to live for thousands of years. The Queen found herself answering despite herself. Grace asked what it was like to rule 17 star systems. The Queen thought for a moment before answering. She said it was lonely. Grace asked why. The Queen said that when you ruled over everyone, you could not be close to anyone. People did not see you as a person. They saw you as a symbol, an authority, a power to be feared or flattered. No one told you the truth. No one disagreed with you. No one treated you like an ordinary being. Grace said that sounded sad. The Queen said it was. She had never admitted that to anyone before. She had never even admitted it to herself. But sitting on the porch of a farmhouse on a tiny planet, talking to a 12-year-old half-human girl, the truth had come out before she could stop it. Grace reached out and took her grandmother's hand. The Queen flinched at the contact. No one had touched her voluntarily in centuries. Grace said that she did not care about empires or star systems. She said that to her, the Queen was just her grandmother, and grandmothers were supposed to be loved, not feared. Something cracked inside the Queen then, something that had been frozen for a very long time. She did not cry, but her eyes glistened in a way they had not glistened since she was a child herself. The second week was different. The Queen began to participate in life on the farm. She helped cook dinner, learning how to use a stove for the first time in her life. She walked with Daniel through the fields, listening as he explained how wheat grew. She read stories to Grace at night, old Earth tales about princesses and dragons and happy endings. She even made peace with Samuel. It happened slowly, one conversation at a time. Samuel told her about the horses he loved, and she listened without judgment. She told him about the world she had seen, and he listened with wide eyes despite himself. By the end of the second week, Samuel showed her how to ride a horse. The queen had traveled between stars. She had commanded fleets and conquered planets, but she had never ridden a horse. It was terrifying and exhilarating and completely undignified. She almost fell off twice. When she finally got the hang of it, when she rode across the open field with the wind in her silver hair, she laughed. She laughed. The sound surprised everyone, including herself. It was rusty and strange, like a machine that had not been used in centuries, but it was real. Watched her mother laugh, and she felt something she had never expected to feel. She felt hope. On the final day of the third week, the queen called a family meeting in the farmhouse kitchen. Daniel made coffee, made pancakes. Samuel and Grace sat at the table, curious about what their grandmother would say. The queen stood at the head of the table, looking at the family she had come to take away. She had arrived 3 weeks ago, ready to drag her daughter back in chains. She had been prepared to eliminate 2 children for the crime of existing. Now she could not imagine doing any of those things. She told them that she had made a decision. She told them that she was not going to force to return. She was not going to harm Daniel or the children. She was going to leave them in peace. But she also said that she had an offer. She wanted to come back to the Empire, not as a prisoner but as an ambassador. She wanted her to bring her human family and show what she had learned. She wanted her to help them remember what they had lost. The Empire was powerful, but it was empty. It conquered worlds but never built anything worth keeping. It ruled over billions of beings but had no connection to any of them. They were dying, not in body but in spirit. Maybe could help change that. Looked at Daniel, he nodded slowly. This was her choice to make. She looked at her children. Samuel's jaw was set, ready to fight if needed. Grace's eyes were bright with curiosity. She looked at her mother, the cold queen who had never smiled, the ruler who had never laughed, the woman who had just spent 3 weeks learning how to be human. Said she would go, but she had conditions. First, her family would be treated with respect. Daniel would not be dismissed as primitive. Samuel and Grace would not be called abominations. They would be welcomed as members of the royal family. Second, Earth would be protected. It would never be conquered or colonized or harmed. It would be declared a sanctuary world, off limits to expansion. Third, her children would be recognized as rightful heirs to the throne. They carried royal blood in their veins. They deserved to be acknowledged. The queen agreed to all 3 conditions without hesitation. 1 month later, the royal ship descended through the clouds above It landed in the great plaza before the palace of black crystal, and the doors opened to reveal something the Empire had never seen before. Princess walked down the ramp with her head held high. She was dressed in simple earth clothes, not the royal robes the court expected. Her silver skin glowed in the light of the alien sun, and her violet eyes surveyed the crowd without fear. Beside her walked Daniel Carter, a farmer from a tiny world in the outer reaches of the galaxy. His hands were rough and his clothes were plain, but he walked like a man who had nothing to be ashamed of. He held his wife's hand and smiled at the thousands of silver faces staring at him. And in front of them walked Samuel and Grace, 12 years old and full of wonder. They looked around at the towers of black crystal and the ships hovering in the sky and the ancient beings who ruled the stars. They were not afraid. They were curious. They were the bridge between 2 worlds. The courtiers stared in silence. They had heard rumors that the lost princess had returned. They had heard that she brought a human family with her, but they had not believed it until now. Queen walked behind her daughter. She had changed in ways that were hard to describe. Her posture was the same, her face was still cold and regal, but there was something different in her eyes, something that had not been there before. She stopped at the top of the palace steps and turned to face her people. She told them that her daughter had returned. She told them that the missing heir to the throne had come home at last. She told them that had brought with her a gift, the greatest gift the Empire had ever received. She had brought humanity. Not the species, not the planet, but the quality, the warmth, the love, the hope. She had brought everything they had forgotten. The courtiers did not know how to respond. They had never heard their queen speak like this. They had never seen her stand beside a human as if he were an equal. But Grace stepped forward, and she did something that no child had ever done in the history of the Empire. She smiled at them. It was such a simple thing, a small girl smiling at a crowd of strangers, but it was also revolutionary. It was proof that the cold did not have to last forever. It was proof that even the most ancient empires could change. One by one, slowly at first and then faster, they began to smile back. The missing daughter had returned, and she had brought with her the future. The stars watched as they always did, but this time they saw something new. They saw hope.